Now, if you've been watching this channel for some time, or even if you're brand new to this channel, you may know or you will come to know that I talk a lot about anxiety. I talk about different practices on how to heal through anxiety. I talk about different insights and understandings of the mind and the body so that we can move through anxiety. And with little bits of my story weaved in between. But today I really wanted to share with you some of the more defining moments that led me to taking medication and that led to me feeling better and more connected to who I am after past those moments of what my anxiety really began as. And so aside from experiencing anxiety when I was about 8 years old and having absolutely no clue what it was that I was experiencing, right? I know now that it was obsessive compulsive disorder. And then having insane stomach aches throughout the majority of my teenage years that would leave me paralyzed for days at a time. There are a couple defining moments that I really want to share with you in case you happen to be experiencing anxiety right now, or you are currently on the journey of healing through your anxiety right now. And this defining moment, really one of my major defining moments took place about 10 years ago now, right? I was about 18, I'm 28 now. And I was at my local airport, 45 minutes from my house. I was with my uncle and I was with my father, and we were getting ready to go on this really incredible 3-day weekend in Florida, which, if you're not familiar with the States, it's about a 3-hour flight away from here. And I was headed down to Florida for a college orientation. I got accepted to my #1 choice school. Florida Gulf Coast University has a wakeboarding team. I get to study on the beach, and I was going there for nursing school. And I already got accepted. I just had to go down there and meet my roommates, get acclimated to the campus, and start to get myself ready to go to school there in about a month and a half. And 20 minutes before I was to board this plane, I was getting my bags ready to walk to the gate. I remember looking at my dad and absolutely breaking down. And in this moment of absolute paralyzation, emotionally and in my mind, physically, my whole body locked up, and I experienced one of the most massive anxiety attacks that I have ever experienced. This anxiety attack led me to never get on that plane, never board that plane. It led me to never go to that orientation weekend. It led me to never even step foot on that campus ever again. I never went to school there. And not to mention, this moment was built up of 6 months, 7 months, 8 months of anxiety prefacing that. And it all came down to this moment. Now, to cut scenes for a second, it has been now about 5 years since I was in Los Angeles. I was at LAX airport, and I was seated with somebody who I barely knew and one person who I didn't know at all. And we knew each other just through being part of the same online Tony Robbins community at that point in time. And I was about 5 minutes from boarding a plane to Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, I would have an 18-hour layover before taking another 6-hour flight over to Bali, Indonesia. And I stepped on that plane. I got on that first flight. I went through that layover, made that last flight, and I was able to live in Indonesia for what ended up being about a total of 6 months. 5 years in between, right? And I got to live there for about 6 months. I got to work with the locals. I got to learn about farming. I got to explore myself further as I was in this new culture, in this new country, and I got to immerse myself in live the life that I wanted to live. And the reason that I share these two stark different experiences is for one reason, one major takeaway that I want to share within this video, and that is that if you are currently experiencing anxiety, or you have experienced anxiety and you're looking for ways to heal, the one takeaway that was a guiding light for me is we are so much more powerful than the anxiety that we've experienced or the anxiety that we are actively experiencing. And I know that it could be incredibly difficult to even conceptualize that that is possible, but it is most definitely the truth. And the reason being is because after that moment where I could not step foot on the plane after this massive anxiety attack before going to Florida for this orientation, just a few weeks later was when I went on my journey of starting Zoloft. And paired with that Zoloft, I also started seeing a psychologist. And if you don't know my journey already from previous videos, I went on Zoloft for about 2.5 years. And within that time frame, Zoloft acted as a crutch for me to support myself as I did deeper healing work in the wounds that were leading to the anxiety that I was experiencing. And I remember clear as day my psychologist at that point in time sharing with me that this healing was possible, that the stomach aches that I was experiencing, the thoughts that I was experiencing, the shortness of breath and the obsessive compulsive thoughts, the intrusive thinking, they were something that could be healed through. And I'll never forget these moments because, again, this notion, this belief that we are so much more powerful than the anxiety that we experience or have experienced has been a guiding light for me on my journey. And I share it here in case you happen to be going on Zoloft for the first time, embarking on a healing journey for the first time. And so what happened, aside from Zoloft, during those 5 years in between not being able to step foot on a plane for a 3-hour flight to being able to get on a flight that ended up being a total of a couple of days worth of travel, well, it was a culmination of things. What my journey was then was I took the medication, this SSRI, Zoloft, for about 2.5 years, while being supported one-on-one by this therapist at the time. But what happened in there was, number one, I became and I started to shed awareness on the wounds that were beneath the surface of my anxiety that I have picked up through my childhood, through my teenage years, throughout my life experiences that were ultimately disconnecting me from myself and therefore leading to this symptom of anxiety, right? Because as I repeat so frequently in my videos, anxiety is simply a symptom of being disconnected from ourselves. And so when we can understand that, well, then we could start to navigate through that anxiety and start to understand what the wounds are underneath, so then we could begin healing them. And so I got the one-on-one support, I went on the medication, and then I started to shed awareness on these wounds. And once I started to shed awareness on these wounds, then I started to incorporate practices, right? Things like meditation. Meditation has been a huge one for me, if you're familiar with the channel. A massive practice for me. You could check out maybe some videos that I'll link up here, talk a little bit more about that. But included in that was yoga. And at that point in time, I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy. And slowly over time, I've begun to do other practices like somatic therapy, starting to begin feeling my emotions and befriending my emotions, right? And so before I start to get into all these practices and what they are, the major takeaways from here is that aside from getting the one-on-one help, going on the medication, I started to shed awareness on those wounds. I started to understand those wounds, and then I started to incorporate and practice these empowering practices that started to transcend the anxiety and help me come back into connection with the truth of who I am. Which, again, if you've seen me before on here, we are peaceful, powerful, clear, confident, and creative beings. And it's just a matter of being able to transcend those clouds of anxiety. And when we transcend and come back into connection with ourselves, it's like being an archaeologist discovering the pyramids of Giza for the first time. Imagine being able to uncover the pyramids of Giza for the first time, and then being able to witness that you're uncovering this whole civilization with secrets that you couldn't have ever fathomed being possible. That's what it's like when we come home to ourselves, because when we transcend that anxiety, we have gifts that we weren't aware of before. Whatever those gifts happen to be, an incredible intuition, a specific talent or creative ability, and it becomes a whole different way of life. A way of life that allows us to live the life that we want to be living, aka being able to travel to a different country to live and work and experience, instead of not being able to go to the school that you want because you happen to be paralyzed by the anxiety that you're experiencing. And I don't know about you. I would assume that I do know about you because you're sitting here watching this, but I know we all deserve to experience the life that we have in our minds and in our hearts. And it's just a matter of uncovering the power that exists within us so that we could slowly but surely uncover that path of what's possible for us, right? The last thing that I'll put in there, surround yourself with other like-minded people, because as you do that, and this was also another major part of my journey, as you do that, I almost left this out. Can't be leaving this out. We start to let go of all the big things that we've been holding on to in these safe spaces. And when we can start to let go and see that we're not alone and release things that maybe we've been holding on that have been super heavy into these safe places with other people, my gosh, it's like, we've become lighter, you know? And so that's another major component, is just having like-minded people along with you in what could otherwise sometimes be a lonely journey. And that's all of what I've got for you today. But aside from that, I want to give you the opportunity to take a step right from this video if you are on your journey or beginning your journey. And the first opportunity that I have is if you're interested in just beginning to explore and create awareness of yourself. I host meditations online and a whole assortment of other events that you could check out in my links below. You'll see it's on my website. I have a calendar there where you can see the different events. And number two, I also just got to put together the culmination of the practices and understandings and the insights that have ultimately led to me being able to get on that 24-hour flight, and ultimately for me to be able to share these things with you in the way and the manner that I am in a self-guided online course. One that I felt is easy to digest instead of putting a bunch of YouTube videos together, and also inexpensive so that it doesn't need to be a big barrier to entry for us to really come back to who we are. And again, not only do you deserve to experience the peace, the power, the confidence, and clarity of who you are, but also this world gets to be a significantly kinder, more compassionate world to live in when we're all connected more to ourselves. Because when we're more connected to ourselves, we're also more connected to this thing inside of our chest called our heart. And so we get to support each other on bringing that out. So welcome back to another opportunity to learn, to grow, and to evolve, not just on your own, but together as a whole community of people coming back home to themselves. If that was of value, and only if that was of value, I invite you to like this video so that it sends it out to more people who might benefit from it. And more importantly, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts that you'd really like to share to get some answers on, share them in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to keep it private, you could reach out to me via Instagram and we could have a conversation there as well. In the meantime, until we see each other in the next video, I wish you the absolute best in you taking your steps on your journey, and I'll be right here continuing to take my steps on my journey, because we just get to keep excavating those pyramids and coming back home to the gifts that are within us and true to who we are. Much love to you. Ciao.